Hi everybody, it's Amy and Maggie from ThinkerThemer, and we're back with another episode of Shelfworthy, where we try and put new titles onto our permanent shelf, and we give you the reasons why we are adding them to our collection or not. This time we have one of our most anticipated games of the year. It is El Paso, which is the latest installment in the Great Western Trail series, a series of games that we absolutely adore. No matter if we're playing them multiplayer or Maggie's playing them solo, we absolutely love them. And this is meant to be a more streamlined, simpler version of the game. So now let's get into our review.
So in Great Western Trail El Paso, we find ourselves as ranchers in the late 19th century in El Paso, where it just so happens that all of these train networks are finally connecting in, and it's now this hustling, bustling trading hub. So as very ambitious ranchers, what we're going to want to do is, well, purchase more cattle, build up the value of our herd, take them to El Paso and send them off on their way across the United States, recruit some workers that will help us specialize in different things so that we can also do things like construct buildings that will make our life a lot easier because we're going to get a lot of benefits along the way, or even engineers that we're going to be able to use to help with the railway projects and the expansion. All of these things are going to give us that prestige and presence, which obviously is measured as victory points. Whoever does that the best will be the winner.
Now, for those of you that are familiar with Great Western Trail, you'll see a lot of familiar mechanics here. So we are still moving around a rondel, and we are still deck building, trying to get lots of differentiation of cattle cards into our personal decks. We are still building buildings along the way that we can claim as our own, and we are still using a player board where we are upgrading certain powers and unlocking different abilities. Turns are very simple in this game. You're moving around the rondel, and when you land on a building, you are taking the action of that building. But every time you get to El Paso, you're going to be looking at the hand that hopefully you've improved by then and counting up the differentiated cattle in your hand. And then that's going to enable you to deliver to different posts, a lot of which are worth a lot of victory points. But the main aim of the game is to really improve your deck by adding cattle cards that are worth more points and are more differentiated, and adding those workers that are going to allow you to get more done, such as building more impressive buildings along the road to El Paso, accessing different carriages of the train in this one, or purchasing more valuable cattle. One little slight twist in this particular game is that your worker cards are going to go into your deck. Now, they don't muddy up your deck, because when you're drawing from your deck, if you draw a worker, it's going to go into a tableau, and you're going to be able to use that in this round or in future rounds. So in order to be able to use your workers, you first need to put them into your discard pile, shuffle them into your deck, and then wait until they come out naturally into your tableau. And that leads nicely into, how does this game actually feel to play?
Yeah, I think this was, to me, as I was playing this, is like, this feels like as a kid you had like whatever the game was, the travel edition, which is like the smaller, usually magnetized version of the bigger version of the game. And that's exactly what it felt like. It's like all the components are kind of simplified. The game itself is streamlined. You still definitely feel that DNA of like, oh yeah, this is Great Western Trail, and you're doing all the kind of core things. But there's been some sort of different compromises made where some things are now more open or easier, and then some things, like for example, that the cycling of those workers are now more like a timing thing, as opposed to like, oh, I always have these workers, so I can just, whenever I go to that building, I'll be able to kind of activate it at this level.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about this game is that they've changed the market of the different markets in this game. So the first one is like the cattle cards. Usually those are drawn out of the deck, and so there's a little bit of randomization to it, and maybe you want to go ahead and quickly grab that one cattle card that you really want, which is super powerful or linked to an objective. And then the workers are the same. So in this one, the workers are all freely available to you. So you know that when you take the hire a worker action, you're going to get the exact worker that you want. Whereas in the previous titles, there was kind of a worker market, and sometimes there would be one that came up that was really cheap, and you're like, oh, I need to race ahead to grab that so nobody else does. And so for me, what the combination of those things, the fact that the game is a little bit more open and forgiving, had an interesting interaction with the rondel itself, because now I don't feel as pressured to move around the rondel so quickly to beat the other players, which led to less interaction overall, or at least a feeling of there being less interaction. And the original has only mild touches of interaction, but this almost erases it completely.
Interestingly, for me, it's like this felt like the most like multiplayer solitaire experience of all of them, which as I was playing, I was like, I love this. Yeah. I really, and like multiple times out loud, I was like, I'm really enjoying this as I was kind of going through it.
Sure.
At the same time, I'm looking at you going, oh, she's getting zero interaction.
Yeah, there was zero interaction, but for me, a lot less tension as well. And, there's meant to be less tension. It's meant to be kind of the gateway into the series, and it definitely achieves that. But it does remove that tension in the rondelle and a little bit around the tension of having enough money. Like, I didn't feel as, like the game was punishing me as much, and then combined with not having to really care that much about what Maggie was doing, a little bit, but not really. Those are two things that I love in a game. And so for me, I felt a little bit lonely in this game, which was kind of strange because at the same time, it's delivering all of those same elements of the Great Western Trail series, which I love. So it just left me feeling a little bit confused.
And I'm like in my little happy place by myself and I go, yay, no one can bother with my stuff and mess with my stuff.
Now, when I initially read the rule book for El Paso, I absolutely think they achieved what they set out to achieve. It is so easy to learn, and granted, yes, I've played a lot of Great Western Trail, but I thought that they streamlined it in all the right areas, and it still kept that essence of the original games. And that means that this is going to open up Great Western Trail to a lot more players, making it far more accessible, easy to get to the table, and a good training ground if you want to kind of segue people into the harder games.
Level them up gradually. Yeah, absolutely agree. Like, this is so much quicker to get going, and not just to learn, but even the way it plays through, it is much snappier. Like, we've sometimes been able to play this in 30 minutes.
Yeah, Maggie and I can play a 2-player game in 30 minutes. Now, granted, because of the lack of interaction, as Maggie is approaching the end of her turn, I will sometimes begin the start of my turn. So we do have overlapping turns because it doesn't really matter so much if it's not going to impact you. We can tell that, and so we just start playing our turn. So, but if you, have played a lot of Great Western Trail, I think you could get down to a 30-minute game. So.
Now, something else that surprised me was when I was playing this, we first played it multiplayer, and as I was playing, I was like, oh, this is so multiplayer solitaire. I can't wait to play this solo.
And you enjoy solo in the other big games.
I do.
As well.
New Zealand is my favorite because it's got that same mechanic of those cards that work the same way that the workers that the workers work here, where when they come into your deck, they're not muddying your deck up, because as you're drawing them, they just get to kind of go on the on your tableau and you keep going. So I really thought, I can't wait to play the solo. I'm gonna love it. And then interestingly, even though the solo mode is similar to, in here they have Sue, which is the automa, and it's still fairly streamlined. You kind of show a card, and then it'll tell you how many steps Sue will take, and then it usually dictates what the action is. It doesn't take that long, but interestingly, it was, for the size and speediness of this game, it was more distracting than when I'm using it in the bigger game. So if I'm playing New Zealand, for example, there's so much going on. And I know that I'm sitting down and I'm settling in for a good few hours. I didn't mind facilitating that because it's fairly streamlined. Here, it was like, I actually prefer playing solo when I'm playing with other people because they're being the automa in a way.
I'm just the faceless automa.
You are the faceless
that
automa.
You prefer over Sue.
That enables,
just
because that enables me to just kind of keep going with the game and like do my thing. So I didn't really enjoy the solo as much. It's not a bad solo, but it's like for the satisfaction that I get and the amount of setup, and I would probably be reaching for something else. Now, if I had to get picky and be like, well, what would I change about this game? I think actually, following on from the solo discussion, I wouldn't mind having a solo variant that is, this is very much Sue's trying to replicate playing against another player, and Sue was actually, even at the most basic level of difficulty, I still can't beat that score. So yeah, that says a lot about me, but I like that it also gives you those kind of levels of difficulty. You can add essentially different cards from a B deck that makes Sue like powered up. So I would add some variants that are not that are kind of a lot easier to facilitate. So I wouldn't have to like facilitate an automa. It's more like maybe have a particular challenge, still have a limited number of times that you have to go to El Paso before the game ends, but then also it's like a beat your own score within key particular challenges that you also have to achieve during the game. I think I would enjoy something like that more, because I often found that I didn't really get to explore something that I wanted to, because Sue was like racing around and finishing the game before I got a chance to do anything that I kind of wanted to try.
Amy or Sue, one of us is racing around
every
trying
time
to finish the game.
Take it easy, everyone.
I have a lot to say actually about some changes that I'd like to see made to this game. Firstly, it is the Green Line series, which means it is more eco-friendly, and they include some nice little cardboard-based tuck boxes which you can put all the components into, except for the cards, which is a bit weird because I had to add some plastic bags into it just to store the cards. But outside of that, I love that they're trying to not include any plastic. Now, let's get into the components. Firstly, the board is a material board, and it didn't need to be. I mean, maybe it's saving them. I don't know what it's saving them, honestly, but I'm getting a little bit tired about having to get the iron out every time I play a game. We've had a lot of material-based boards lately, and they just get so crinkled when they're folded up in the box. And then when you put tiles on them and things, they don't sit flat. And so I'm like, great, now I've got the steamer or the iron out, and I'm having to do this whole other step before we play a game. So it's not very convenient. And the box is big enough that they could have included even maybe a thinner board, but it would have been really helpful to have that. The second thing that a lot of people have commented about is the size of the meeples.
Why? Why are they so big?
And they are comically
They're
large.
comically big, and also they actively get in the way of gameplay because they're so big that as soon as you have one of them, let alone if you're playing 4 players and you've got 4 of them like trying to like stay on the same board, floor is lava style, you can't actually see what actions are on that building.
Even when we play a 2-player game, we actually choose to sit next to each other rather than across from each other, because otherwise the meeples block your vision. Now, the other thing is they're just so large, which is kind of counter to, are we trying to save the environment? They could have been much smaller. And if I got my little is it called a whittle out, where I could carve off some of that wood, maybe I'd be able to make a series of cubes and discs that could have been wood if we had just funneled some of that wood into the cardboard chip components that are photos of a wooden component. It is very, very odd. Some odd choices there. So yeah, those are, I think some people are going to be a little bit frustrated at the components. Other people have talked about the size of the cards. They are small.
Yes.
That doesn't really bother us, but we have fairly small hands. But I think that maybe some other people might find it a bit clunky. But my main thing is, if Maggie said at the start of this is like the travel edition. If you were going to make a smaller version of El Paso, it almost could have fit, especially with a material board, it could have fit in a much smaller box, and then it truly would be a travel edition.
Half the size,
Anyway, that's my rant over.
So now for the big question, is it going to make it onto our shelves? I'm going to say from a rating point of view, it's an 8 for me. This is a solid hit. It's like, if I'm hungry in the middle of the afternoon and I'm like, you know what, I need like a little healthy snack that will keep me going. This is it. And it's like, I know it'll be satisfying. I know that I'm going to be like, yep, this was good. This will keep me going. It's not a full meal though. So you kind of have to know the occasion for it. I would love, this is the kind of game that I would, if anyone ever asked me, hey, do you want to play Great Western Trail at a con? This is the version that I'm going to be playing because it's fast, it scratches that Great Western Trail itch, and it sort of does it. If someone's like, oh, should I try the series? I'm like, well, I would start with this and see if you kind of like those mechanics, because again, you're going to be able to learn it faster, play it faster, and have that introduction. Would I keep it? Probably not, because just like a snack, it's kind of like that snack that is like, I know that I can usually grab. I'm sure it'll be where, like if I'm at a convention, this will probably be there. If there's people that, like a friend group, and like they'll probably have it if they really, want to play it. Do I need to stock my house with, with this? Probably not. Because again, as I said, if we're going to be playing, if I'm going to be playing solo, I'd probably reach for one of the other ones. I'd still be either playing one of the bigger ones or a smaller solo that's sort of somewhere else.
And for me, I gave it a 7.5. There are 2 things that I love in a game. One is tension and the other is interaction. And this game gives me neither, unfortunately. The original Great Western Trails have enough of that I do feel like I need to keep an eye on where other people are at so that I can race ahead and get all the things done that I want to get done. I didn't feel that pressure here as much. And so for that reason, I would always reach for the bigger titles. And if I wanted a healthy snack in the afternoon, I would be reaching for one of our 2-player games or our lighter games that I feel still have a bit of that interaction and tension. So it's not a keeper for me, but I really enjoy playing it. And I kept thinking, if this was my first entry into the series, like what would that have been like? And I do think that it has some of that, it's kind of got all of the parts in there that to introduce you, but I do think the true magic is in the harder titles. So maybe grab this and get into the series and then level yourself up to the bigger games because they are rewarding at the end. So anyway, that was our shelf-worthy episode for El Paso. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.